let's recap the week that Manchester United goalkeeper André Onana has had, shall we? After that scoreless Manchester derby last weekend and ahead of United's Europa League quarterfinal first leg match against Lyon, Onana was quoted saying this about the tie and their French opponent. Part of that quote was, "Of course it's not going to be easy, but I think we are way better than them." Well, Lyon defender Nemanja Matić caught word of Onana's comment and had this savage response in his pre-match press conference.
I respect everyone, but to say that, then you need to get the answer. If you are one of the worst goalkeepers in Man United history, you need to take care what you are talking. You know, if David De Gea or Peter Schmeichel or Van der Sar say that, then I will question myself. But if you are one of the statistically the worst goalkeepers in Man United modern history, then you know he needs to show that before he says so. We will see.
And then those happenings led to United manager Ruben Amorim making the decision to leave Onana off the roster for their league match against Newcastle yesterday, saying, quote, "Sometimes you have to push the player to play again. Sometimes you have to let him disconnect a little bit. Tomorrow, Andre will be in training to prepare for the next one, so I felt it was a good time for Andre to disconnect." I'm really interested to get your perspective on this because you've been in the dressing room as a player and you've been there as a manager. So what are the benefits and the detriments to doing what Amorim did and leaving your starting goalkeeper off the roster this weekend?
Well, the detriments are obvious, right? You don't know what you're going to get from the guy that you just put in there.
Was that worst case scenario?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Shot yourself in both feet. Yeah.
But the funny thing is, I don't mind the decision as a coach. I really don't, because he's given himself two options right there where Onana's clearly not been good enough this whole season. He's made mistakes that have cost them games. And so you put, the backup goalie. If he has a fantastic game, you might run with him now. And you say, well, let's go and see what he has. And if he doesn't have a great game, well, now you've used this as an Onana reset of sorts, right? I don't know if we're going to get Onana becoming the best goalie of all time, but maybe there's a sort of a reset where, hey, you're going to take a back seat, watch the game from the bench. I think we do this stuff with, players that play on the field all the time, and goalies need to be treated to this, different standard for some reason. So I'm here to say I'm not really all about that. Let him sit on the bench for a game, see if he looks better this next one.
It's funny that you mentioned the field players, Benny, because that's a big problem that's leading to more Onana errors here. So Onana, when you put him in the conversation, tip of the cap to Matić for trying to compare him to United legends. However, when he's in that conversation, he's actually made the most saves per game in the last 20 years for United. So they've strung this man out on a line here. I think they do need to have a come to Jesus where they figure out their defensive woes, because even in the errors that he does make where they concede a goal, you see the United players standing there in the box looking at each other. Like, they just give up on these balls. I don't know what's happening there. It's a symptom of something for sure. But I also do think that if Amorim doesn't play Onana in the next match, he's a bit of a fool, because Bayindir is nowhere near good enough.
I mean, after the game we saw over the weekend, Mike, does Amorim have any choice to play anyone but Onana?
Look, I agree with everything you just said, Benny, because André Onana hasn't been good enough, right? And you can't let a goalkeeper, which is a psychological position, take the technicality away from it. There's a sense of accountability that you need to have happen. So the worst thing that Amorim could have done was put him on the bench. Because now, all the cameras, us included, now it becomes a big conversation. Yeah. So I think he actually protected him by leaving him out of the travel squad. That is a smart move. You have to hold him accountable, because if you don't do that, then us as the media, I know I would be coming for Ruben Amorim's head, because you have to address the issue. The performance against Lyon, the shots, the stops, everything, that was not good enough. André Onana was the difference between Manchester United getting a 2-1 aggregate lead against a very good Lyon side at their place, and it being 2-2, and now it's all to play for. But André Onana is not the problem in Manchester United. There are a hell of a lot more players. That backline that you mentioned, that is such a big, big part of the problem. And for Manchester United overall, this game didn't matter. This is a game where you're looking for positives and you're looking back and there are some negatives. Outside Bayindir is not one of the negatives, in my opinion. You now have answered the goalkeeping question of you start André Onana. I would start Onana on Thursday because he's the guy. He is your guy for now. But it leads me to this. I think Ruben Amorim wants to replace André Onana. You don't make that decision if you're not having question marks this summer about positions you want to fill. I put the goalkeeping position, it moved from maybe 7th in the list. I put it up there, top 3. That has to be addressed this summer.
Cupo, where does that land for you on your list of must-address items this summer?
I mean, I feel like Manchester United this entire season haven't figured most of their issues out, and they've kind of just like thrown Band-Aids on everything as they've gone through this season to this point. I think that in a lot of ways Onana is being scapegoated, but I do think that you need to have a serious come to Jesus and realize what works and what doesn't. Onana was a great keeper for Inter, but they also had one of the world's best defenses. So I think that he'll fit in somewhere else more nicely. He doesn't need to go through this Sisyphean task week over week where you don't have a team supporting you. You're becoming isolated. I do think it's taxing on you mentally to become this focal point when you are, in fact, making big saves. It's just that it's not enough to cover these huge chasms where this team has these just debilitating deficiencies.
Is that how you see it, Benny? How much of the blame, from a coaching and a player standpoint, do you put on your keeper when you know that the back line has quite a few holes?
I don't think Man United's problems start with Onana. I think he's one of the issues, but I think what Mike said, and I think we've all kind of talked about, is the team hasn't found its identity in any way, whether it was Ten Hag or Amorim now. I want to say that probably Amorim wants a lot of changes, if he can. But that's what we're talking about all the time with Man United over the last however many years. And so it's difficult to know what's the first step. I do think that Onana hasn't been good enough and has been left out to dry a lot of times. So it's going to be interesting to see what the offseason brings. But yeah, Onana, hasn't been good, and we'll see what that looks like.
Well, one thing that Amorim can control is how he manages the players inside the confines of Manchester United. So, Mike, when you see how this situation's been handled, when you also look at, the Marcus Rashford situation was a big one. He was moved on from. How would you assess the job that Amorim has done from that player-manager standpoint this season?
Look, I think the Marcus Rashford situation, everything hindsight is 90-90. Marcus Rashford was awful prior to. He was awful.
Wait, what?
He was awful this season. Let's not kid ourselves. We need a Manchester United kid on. How many times did if Marcus Rashford could try, if he could run? It's a mentality shift that Marcus Rashford and Antony, players who were comfortable because they're large salaries, they now have a bit of adversity and they get newer pastures and their careers start to become on the line. And when your career is on the line, Benny, you know this, there's a bit of impetus, there's a bit of that fire that's stoked in you that you want to prove people wrong. I think for Ruben Amorim, this was actually a positive thing. I know it's split. I know you go to social media, people are saying that dreadlock-haired guy is an absolute fool for saying that, but I stand by this. We will find out, though. It's all about Thursday. This Newcastle United match, there are some positives, like I said, but the big thing isn't Onana. The big thing that I take away from this, the injury to Joshua Zirkzee. That is a massive, I never thought I'd be saying this season, that is a massive blow for Ruben Amorim and his side. The positive, though, maybe I did some running in the gym and I'm feeling more positive, is you do get some players back, right? Kobbie Mainoo's back. That's a big boost. You have Mason Mount, who can fill in anywhere in the midfield. So Manchester United is bigger in terms of issues than André Onana, but they have a big chance on Thursday. It's their season on the line again, and we'll come back here next week, and we'll be crapping on Onana, I'm sure.
No, there'll be maybe some positive storyline. I think we're going to get some kind of storyline in this Thursday game, and I could see Onana making a big save and them going through, maybe saving on a penalty or something like that, but I could see this story even blowing up, whether it goes to the negative route or the positive route. We'll see on Thursday.
Who knows? Maybe André Onana did one of those Aaron Rodgers underground dark bunker for a few days, just really expel all the bad juju. But really, I mean, Cupo, Europa League has been pretty much the lone bright spot in Manchester United's season. They are one positive result away from getting to the semifinal. They're one of the favorites in this competition. So how will Amorim's tenure be viewed if United are not able to get past Lyon on Thursday?
I feel like right now that's the bare minimum for him because everything's gone so wrong that he needs some singular vestige that he's done something as a manager this season. Everything else has been a mess.